The 1970s, a time of such tumultuous change across the planet that horror cinema had so much source material to draw from that it must have felt like a cartoon cat in a jacuzzi bird bath. And while you may think that is a particularly strange metaphor, the 1970s were a particularly strange metaphorical time. The Cold War, Watergate, Margaret Thatcher, more military coups than you can shake a stick at, Ataris, Apple computers, Pontiac Firebirds, anti-Vietnam, feminism, The Doors, Led Zeppelin, Star Wars, and some of the greatest horror movies ever made. Period. I guess we better take a look then, shall we? Hello horror fans and welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, top 5 scary videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host Jack Finch, as today we gleefully take a look at the top 5 scariest horror movies from the 70s. Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, that clip was from the 1976 showstopper Carrie, because let's face it, there are just too many classics to make this list, so I've got to try somehow. Also, that reminds me, because today we're being joined by our new best friend, Jocelyn. What's going on, Jocelyn? Jocelyn here is the brand new host of our brand new sister channel, Top 10 Beyond the Screen, and it's a pleasure to have you here today. I hear that you're a bit of a horror fanatic yourself.
I very much am. I'm super excited to be here because horror movies are my thing.
You're the place to be if horror movies are your thing. What's your favorite horror film?
From the 1970s?
No, because that's just too hard. I don't want to give you that. I don't want to give you that curveball.
I think I would have to say Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow, you may just be surprised. You heard it, guys. Make sure you head over to Top 10 Beyond the Screen, subscribe, check out their first new videos. What have you got? What's the first one going up?
The first video either comes out today or tomorrow, and I'm going to be talking all about the Frozen 2 Disney movie that is coming out this year.
That looks great.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that.
Amazing.
Disney.
Let's jump in. Kicking off at number 5, it's Jocelyn's favourite film ever, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. If you're a fan of Top 5 Scary, you'll know the reverence that I hold for Tobe Hooper's slasher masterpiece, and the fact that it only makes the 5th place of this list shows you just how serious we are about 70s horror cinema. Hint, we're pretty damn serious. It goes without saying really, but the importance that 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre holds within cinema is never a chainsaw were to be taken lightly, and terrifyingly, it introduces to one of horror cinema's most iconic, monstrous villains, our boy, Leatherface. Inspired by the real-life crimes of serial killer and cannibal Ed Gein, Tobe Hooper set out in the sun-baked, sweltering countryside of rural Texas with a shoestring budget of just $140,000 and a cast of completely unknown ragtag actors and volunteers to make one of the finest horror films of the decade. Following its October 1974 release, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was banned outright in several countries, and it was hit by a severe outcry of complaints about its violence. One of the most infamous connotations associated with the film was Hooper's intentional claim that the film you're about to see is true as a response to being lied to by the government about things that were going on all over the world, Watergate and the atrocities of the Vietnam War. That's the 70s, man.
Next up at number 4, Suspiria, 1977. Perhaps one of the most influential demonstrations of Italian giallo cinema, 1977 Suspiria has cemented itself as one of the finest examples of cult horror. It's also just a feast for the eyes and one of the most beautiful films of the decade, so if anything, watch it purely for that fact. Written and directed by the legendary Dario Argento, Suspiria makes up to the first of the trilogy referred to as The Three Mothers, including 1980's Inferno and 2007 The Mother of Tears. The story follows Susie Banyan, played by Jessica Harper, an American ballet student who arrives at the renowned dance academy in Freiburg, Germany, that inadvertently turns out to be a corrupt, terrifying witches' coven. Suspiria very clearly follows the formula of Italian giallo cinema, but also subverts it in many ways, with its attention to detail and its handling of feminism in cinema, and its underlining tone of the supernatural and the occult. It's violent, it's unnerving, but it's also vividly beautiful, and one of the greatest movies that the 1970s ever gave us.
Swinging in at number 3, Eraserhead, 1977. To say that I was disturbed when I first saw David Lynch's Eraserhead is a bit of an understatement, because this film isn't just disturbing, it's traumatizing on a spiritual level, and it intentionally leaves emotional scars juxtaposed by its strange, alluring beauty. I don't know exactly what to think about Eraserhead, and I still don't, but I guess that's the beauty of Lynch's filmmaking. Seriously, if you haven't seen this film, just watch it, then let the whole thing sink in, and then let me know how it goes, because as far as horror is concerned, this film is in a complete and utter league of its own, in the sense that there is nothing at all like it. Written and directed by David Lynch, Eraserhead tells the tale of Henry Spencer, played by Jack Vance, who is left to care for his grossly deformed child, if you can call it a child, in a desolate and bleak industrial landscape. It's fantasy, it's despair, it's a study of psychological isolation and the fear of male parenthood. I think. I have no idea, it's Eraserhead. It won't horrify you in the same way that the rest of the films on this list will, but you'll be shook in a completely different manner. Trust me.
Coming in at number 3 and directed by the legendary William Friedkin, was adapted by William Peter Blatty from his The Exorcist is considered to be one of the most influential horror movies of all time, and is recognized by many to be the greatest supernatural horrors ever made, and I totally agree. Starring the awesome Max von Sydow as Father Merrin, The Exorcist tells the tale of Chris MacNeil, an ancient demon known as Pazuzu, after messing around with the Ouija board. That is always a bad idea. From start to finish.
Number 1 spot, Alien, 1979.
Oh God!
And it would make the top of this list time and time again purely for that scene alone. John Hurt, everybody, with a xenomorph bursting out of his chest. There are so many reasons why Ridley Scott's Alien is one of the greatest horror movies ever made, never mind the greatest horror movie of the 1970s. Yeah, you might figure me biased because 1986 Aliens made it to the top of our 80s list, but there's a reason for that, and that's because they're both just so damn good. And that scene alone, man. John Hurt's Kane, who's had an unknown alien creature attached to his face for days on end, sits down with his blue-collar Nostromo crew members for a nice bite to eat, and then begins painfully convulsing, and the rest is cinematic history. When you think about it in terms of poetry, Ridley Scott's Alien is perhaps the perfect film to transition between the 1970s and the 1980s, literally giving birth to a whole new style of science fiction horror, like a xenomorph straight out of a chest cavity, and subsequently spawning one of the most extensively impressive and captivating horror franchises of all time. Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, Ian Holm, John Hurt, really, you can't get much better, and looking back at Alien, it's still as captivatingly horrifying as it was in 1979. Well, there we have it, horror fans, our list for the top 5 scariest horror movies from the 70s. Why don't you let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think, Jocelyn? How's that list?
I think I'm pretty torn between Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist, but I'll keep them at my top 2.
At least they both made this list then.
Yes.
Top
exactly.
2? Oh, well. What about outside of the 70s? Is there anything?
Alright, I'd have to say one of my favorite that is more recent is Hush. It was 2016.
Oh, great. Yeah.
It was such a cool concept. So
Hush is a great film.
Have you seen it?
I have indeed seen it. Make sure that you guys go and give Jocelyn a warm horror fan welcome over at Top 10B on the screen. Tell him that Jack sent you, and maybe you'll get a thumbs up or something. I don't know. I'm not giving out false
I can
promises.
definitely give you a thumbs up.
If you're a fan of this video though, make sure to hit that thumbs up button as well as that subscribe button, and we'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Jack Finch. A huge thanks to Jocelyn for stopping by. You've been watching Top 5 Scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.